placed at headquarters a group of scouts, arcanists, and daredevils who fly patrols against centaurs and other bandits throughout the Margrave and serve as the city's eyes and ears in wartime.
A large, unassuming compound with walls of striking robin's egg blue, where Zobeck, spymaster and head of the city's secret service, sends operatives within the free city and beyond.
A place where the music is magical and haunted, and whose door is guarded by a troll wife bouncer who hates strangers and makes entry difficult.
A tavern of paladins and priests of the sun god and war god, where bouts of combat occur each night and prayer services are held at dawn and noon. Hey, Midgardians, I'm Clay.
And I'm Joe.
Welcome to That Midgard Show. This is a podcast where we talk about the Midgard campaign setting.
And we have a great show today. We're going on a tour of the Citadel district of Zobeck, which is one of the smallest districts.
Yeah, Joe, the Citadel district is located in the northern part of the city that contains the walled citadel and its highly skilled griffin knights who protect Zobeck's uppermost river entrances. It is also essentially where Zobeck's military is headquartered alongside its spy service.
Yeah, and we usually start off with an adventure recap, but we thought we'd switch it up by showing off some of the characters we play using Midgard content. So, Clay, why don't you start and tell us about your character?
Yeah, my character is Eggy Rüber, and he is a level 9 Circle of the Green Druid. And you can find Circle of the Green in Tome of Heroes from koboldpress. That material is available now. I love playing druids. If you haven't played a druid, do it. They are so versatile, and the wild shaping features, that is a way that you can use to kind of stack hit points and do some crazy stuff. In fact, in one of my campaigns, and you heard me talk about him, Kriv, he's a druid of a different circle, but he wild shapes a lot into crazy animals, and he really uses his wild shape ability as a utility. And that's kind of the inspiration I took with Eggy is that when he wild shapes, he does so for a reason, not necessarily just to kind of add temporary hit points, to the top of his character. But when I create characters, I like to have some inspiration, and my inspiration for Eggy was Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. I wanted this really chill, character. Hey man, let's just kind of go with the flow. We don't need a map. We just go that away. He's really in tune with nature. Really loves to find what he calls necessary pharmaceuticals out in the wild.
Nice.
And there's a particular reason why he does that, but he's quite the character. I describe him a lot like a cross between Tommy Chong and Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. And he has Moonbeam. That when he casts it, it kind of looks more like a bong or a lava lamp. Just kind of depending his mood. You never see him get rattled, even in the worst of circumstances when he's fighting a monster, he's just like, hey, man, we don't need to fight. It's totally cool. Let's just kind of chill. Occasionally when he's trying to sweet talk a guard, he may slip a little bit of his medicinals into his pocket and just says, awesome. That's for later, dude.
That's really...
But one of the tropes I use with Eggy is... he wears a red bandana and round glasses like Tommy Chong did in the Cheech and Chong movies. Right. And when he wild shapes, he wild shapes perfectly, except the headband and the glasses are still there, whatever creature he's in. Even if it's a spider, you see the headband around the spider's head and glasses, multiple version of glasses on its multifaceted eyes and things like that. So, they always know, if Eggy's in a swarm of rats, they can pick out Eggy from the rest.
Where did the name Eggy come from?
It's kind of funny. My daughter and wife were watching the British Bake Off, And one of the contestants says, my pudding looks more like Eggy Rubber. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect name, So I changed it to Rüber, but that's where I got it. I got it from a contestant on the British Bake Off. But the Circle of the Green, really fits him. There's like this green spirit that Eggy calls Mary Jane. I wonder why he does that, but he just kind of lives through the spirit. He doesn't worry about things. He's actually, in his backstory, he's a war veteran, and he's a veteran of the wars between the Ghoul Empire and the Vampire Kingdom, and when he left the military and the war was over, he kind of became a nomad, retreated into the forest, was a hermit, has some degree of PTSD, which is what he uses the natural pharmaceuticals for, kind of keep his dreams down and just kind of mellow him out. But more often than not, that part, he hasn't really revealed yet, but, he despises undead. He thinks, he often says the only good undead is a dead undead. And then he kind of like has a funny look on his face. He's, oh, that doesn't make sense, man, but he does not like it. He lost one of his best friends to the ghouls and had to watch him, essentially be killed. And, he's still troubled by that. But, he's a great partner, loves everybody, he's a lover, not a fighter, man, but he'll get into a good fight, so, I really kind of, play up the Circle of the Green features, into Eggy's persona and, really try to, incorporate that a lot. And the green spirit as well, that's something that he can use as wild shape feature to kind of conjure, for lack of a better word. The creature is just kind of this misty figure and, smoky or lavally, depending on what he wants it to do during, any encounter. And so, I just kind of really play up that Cheech and Chong trope as much as I can. And also, be respectful, drug use is not something to kind of make light of. But I play it in a way to, in a way that's a little bit more comedy than.
No, it's funny. I love the character concept.
Yeah. So how about you, Joe?
So I have this buddy that I've been playing with. He's the one guy who DMs for me. I talk about the game sometimes on our podcast, and he's a really creative, really good DM. Just comes up with great story elements. But the way he does certain things, he's a tough DM with certain aspects. For instance, when we die, we roll a saving throw the second we drop. And then you roll it again on your turn. So there's certain things he does to make stuff harder. He also does things to make things easier as well. But I find him to be a very challenging, DM when it comes to encounters. So when he wanted to start this new game, he described the world as kind of like a late 1700s, early 1800s kind of northern UK type setting. Think marshlands and rough terrain. Gunpowder is a thing, tricorder hats, all of that. So I was like, all right. And I'm like, is there gunpowder? He goes, yeah, there's definitely gunpowder. So Tome of Heroes had just dropped, and I'm like, I know what I want to do. I'm definitely going to do some gunpowder. And just based on what he described, I thought a ranger would be really good in this environment because there's this whole section of like marshlands up north that are tough, and it's just this kind of crazy area. So I decided to go with the Gunslinger Ranger in Tome of Heroes. And my guy, like, I am not one to min-max or overly optimize a character, and I am not one to do the dark brooding hero. And I decided I'm going to do both of those things with this character. So it's just not something I normally do. So I kind of optimized him a bit with his stats and his abilities and his feats and things like that, because I knew it was going to be a hard campaign. And, I decided to just kind of go with that a little bit more dark hero type of figure. So I made Borgan Felbane, he is essentially a bounty hunter. Is what his kind of job has become because the need, arise. He's kind of like a witcher almost in a sense as well, because he started off really as just more or less a hunter. Him and his dad being out hunting, and his dad was attacked and killed by an owl bear. And then he decided he was going to start, clearing the woods and stuff of more dangerous types of creatures. And he kind of started off that way, and then it evolved into bounty hunting. And that's kind of where he finds himself. And in fact, in one of our very first sessions, we got to fight and kill this owl bear, which was just awesome for my story. And it just kind of started snowballing from there. And I tried to play him as this guy who, takes on jobs. He knows how to, he's actually decent at knowing how to deal with the law, because it's kind of this authoritarian type of government in the area that you can easily get on the wrong side of. And he knows how to deal with them. He just basically just plays into them all the time. Oh yeah, I brought you, here's this. Anytime you guys need help, I'll help, blah, blah, blah. And in the meantime, he basically hired the rest of the players. He's like, I need help on this job. I'll split the money with you guys. This is what we're doing. So he's kind of the de facto group leader as well. And so the ranger itself is interesting. So obviously he's all about guns. He's got a couple of flintlock pistols, and he's got a musket. He also has a sword for when he needs it. But some of the abilities that he has are things like, first off, there's a gun fighting style. So as opposed to taking the the archery one that would be +2 to attacks, instead I get to reroll ones on damage dice. So that kind of, it's a lot of damage there. And then later on, you kind of get these trick shots. So you can do things like a disarming shot, a deafening blast. You can do ricochet shots. You can knock objects. Like if there's a lever on the other side of the room that needs to get pushed, you can shoot that lever and push it. Things like that are kind of cool. But then I also went and took sharpshooter, and I took the gunslinger feat, and I took piercer recently when I hit level 4, because I am a variant human. So I've got 3 feats at the moment. So essentially, I get to ignore loading. I get to reroll on ones. Now I get to do extra crit dice, and we use the exploding dice rule. So anytime I roll max dice, I get to roll extra ones. So if I crit, I could do some insane damage. I've done 30 points of damage, 35 points of damage in a single shot, at level 3. So he's pretty strong. And yet we still have really challenging encounters. Like I said, the DM does not make it easy. So the character is holding his own, but he's just super fun to play. He's got the highway, the leather highway coat and the tricorder hat, and he's just he kind of gets caught up in the moment. He's a pretty decent guy. He's not a bad person, but when he finds somebody he really doesn't like, or a target he really doesn't like, he really enjoys the kill. He kind of gets a little carried away sometimes in the kill. So that's kind of the flaw that I built into him, was sometimes he enjoys killing a bit too much. And the rest of the party, we look at him like, whoa, dude, calm down. But it's been a fun character. Like I said, I hit level 4 recently. So he's still somewhat of a young character, but I'm really enjoying him. I don't know if I'm going to multi-class him or not. I don't think I will, just because I'm liking it. I am using some of the Tasha's guide rules for the alternate rangers, because I really feel like Tasha's fixed a lot of the base ranger stuff. But so far, it's a ton of fun, a ton of fun. So I'm going to keep it going, but I like him a lot.
Yeah. Any memorable moments from your character yet?
Oh God, so many actually. Well, there's the owlbear thing, right? But we had tracked these guys down to this old abandoned church, and it was basically just a stone framework left of this church. And we knew there was not a good way to sneak in, so I'm like, let's just go in guns blazing. So literally, we kick the door down, fight breaks out, we're doing all this stuff. This one guy though kind of gets in on me. I usually try to stay out of range, even though with the gunner feat, I actually can shoot point blank without disadvantage. But I generally try to stay back when I can. And this one guy was kind of he wasn't even like the boss. He was like a pesky character, but he was beating me up. And finally, like, I got away from him and I pull off a shot and I nat 20. I roll exploding dice. Like, I got exploding dice. I rolled again. It was like 35 points of damage or something to this guy who had like 3 hit points left. So I literally blew him back, like blew a hole in his chest. He went flying back through a window of the church and landed outside, just sprawled. And like the whole fight just stops and looks for like a second. So we've had a lot of fun. Like he's had some really just cool moments of just getting kill shots and just big damage and just some cool stuff. He's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying the gunpowder rules. Like that was probably one of the things I think I was looking forward to most about Tome of Heroes, and it has not disappointed at all. Like I want to play more of these gunpowder subclasses because they're fun, and the rules in here in general for gunpowder are fun. Like really, really well done.
Yeah, that's cool. For Eggy, his memorable moment. We were in the Arbanest forest exploring some ruins, and Eggy has speak with plants, and there was this mushroom grove growing in the ruins, and the GM decided, let's have some interaction between Eggy and some mushrooms, and so we spent like 15 minutes, in conversation with mushrooms, and Eggy, was just doing his cool, chill, Grateful Dead type person, and the other players just were laughing their butt off. I'm not a comedian, and I'm not very good at improv, but I was on my game that night, and it was for a fun time. I wish we recorded it, but so now also every time Eggy takes a short rest or a long rest, he'll start a conversation with a tree to try to get some information about things.
That's fun.
His conversation with the mushroom, he got a little bit of information, because plants don't have a lot of intelligence, and they don't respond in incomplete sentences. So that's fun.
Yeah, my wife's Drew was the same way. Like every time we rested, she would go for the medicine. We called it Dappy, and she had this habit of always trying to befriend animals that were dangerous. Like one time she thought it was a parrot, but it was actually what I call a macabre bear instead of an owl bear, and it attacked them. Like it happened a lot where she thought there was some sweet innocent animal and it was something dangerous that attacked the party. So yeah, I messed with her a lot.
Yeah. Well, Eggy is on the hunt for unicorn poo. And one of these days, the GM will let me find it. It's a special ingredient in one of his medicinal concoctions.
Yeah, it's a fertilizer. It's a special fertilizer.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. So, well, the Citadel district is what we're going to dive into today. So, tell us a bit about the overview of the Citadel.
Yeah, when you look at the maps on midgardmaps.koboldpress.com and you go to the Zobeck map, you'll see that the Citadel district is on the kind of right side of the map. North is the right side of the map. The Citadel district is in the northeast part of the city, and it's along the river. It's kind of an area that has a gate that goes and a bridge that goes across the River Argent into the pastures. The Citadel houses, 2 military components. One is the Free City Army, and the other one is the Griffin Knights. And if you recall from one of our earlier episodes, the Griffin Knights are kind of independent. They do, fly their griffins, around and patrol the Margrave, and make sure that trade keeps moving, because summer times is when the trade north and south happens, and they patrol the area, as best they can. And they have a long history of Zobeck, even going back to the Strauss times.
They're dwindling now, right? There's only about 5 or 6 of them left.
Yeah.
So their power, not that I don't want to say their power is waning, just their numbers are kind of starting to wane. And I don't know if that's because of lack of griffins or lack of people willing to take on the role of Griffin Rider. I believe there is a subclass or something for Griffin Rider in one of the books in the Midgard Heroes Handbook too.
Yeah,
So you
Heroes
can be a
Handbook and one
Griffin
other
Rider.
publication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Animals are tough to wrestle with, in an adventuring party, but really they go back to the Strauss days, where they were utilized as mercenaries essentially. But not a lot is talked about in the book for the Griffin Knights, particularly. Just a little bit of lore, their history. Their barracks there is just kind of a sentence in the book, so it's really yours to take and make it your own. It's one of those things that the designer probably intentionally left out to make it a sandbox for yourself.
It's a cool aspect of the city. Like when my players first got into Zobeck, with my first session that I talked about in our earlier episode, one of the things I was saying is as they were looking around, like, you see a shadow pass over and you look up and you see this griffin flying above you, above the city, heading towards a citadel off in the distance. And it was just kind of a cool thing, like to throw in there, just as a flavor, like when your party first gets to Zobeck, to see a griffin flying by.
Yeah, and you can't, their griffins are very unique. They're kind of speckled. The rider and the griffin, kind of form a close bond with one another. But like any order, like knights, they have their grooms and their trainers. You can really, if one of your players, wants to learn how to fly on a griffin, you can go to the Margrave and capture some and use the services of the trainers to show you how to, ride those animals. Because when you first hop on a griffin, no animal, is willing, to have a rider, right out of the gate. So like a wild horse, you're going to go through a period of falling on the ground and and a sore butt, So, it's really an area of the Citadel that you can really just add, your own spin on things.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's a cool part. I think the Griffin Rider is one of those things that give Zobeck that unique feel. I think that's, just an aspect I like to play with. And I my players haven't been there yet, but I'm looking forward to them getting up there and, maybe interacting with a Griffin Rider or, somebody from that region, or maybe while they're out in the Margrave doing something there in a combat, a Griffin Rider swoops down and is like, what's going on here, kind of thing, like policing the area. So there's a lot of places that your party can visit in the Citadel district. One of which is the obvious tavern, right? They're gonna go looking for a tavern to hang out with, and that might not be an easy task for the average adventuring party. One of those taverns is known as the King Head's Tavern, right? But it's mostly going to cater to soldiers and paladins and things like that. So you may or may not be welcomed in that tavern, depending on who you are. There's also the White Rose Tavern, which again, that's more of like, so I would say that the King's Head is more like the average shoulder, where the White Rose is more like the paladins and priests and stuff like that go into those taverns. One of those actually has the bouncer that we talked about, right? In our little prologue in the beginning. It's a this troll wife that basically like restricts entry in and makes it hard. If she doesn't know you or she doesn't like you, you're not getting in. So it's an interesting dynamic, I think, with that one. Which one was that? That was
her name's Peppercorn. Yeah, Peppercorn at the King's Head Tavern.
That's at the King's Head Tavern.
Yeah, and just imagine you being sent there to get some information, and there's this velvet rope, and then there's Peppercorn. And she's so intimidating. She's big, tall, big,
green, hairy.
She doesn't suffer fools. It's a really nondescript building. It's your typical heavy slate roof, half timbered walls, stone foundation. It looks like just another city tavern there. You'll know you're there because, there's a sign over it with a golden crown and the white head of a bearded man. So it's said that the bearded man may be the last Strauss to rule before the revolt. Who knows? It could be, whatever you want. But once you get inside, it's a warm place. It smells good. There may be an ale drake, inside, may not. It's really up to you. But the proprietor, his name is Hazel. She's called the brew mistress, and then the chef is Jacko, and they take pride in the drink they serve and the food that they prepare, and they make sure everybody is taken care of.
Another interesting aspect is that you might notice a small door in the tavern, and they call it the King's Door. And this is actually the door for the Mouse King. This place serves as the Mouse King's headquarters. So we talked about Maisie in the past when we talked about the government of the city, because he happens to also sit on the council, but he's also what we might call an unsavory character. He's kind of a gang leader of the Mouse Kingdom and the Undercity and all of that. So he's a very interesting character in Zobeck. He is also one of the animal lords, and you'll find a actual stat block for him in Creature Codex, I believe. Yep. So cool character, someone you may run into when you're in this tavern and some of his cohorts. But yeah, that's one of the more interesting aspects of this tavern is that you might find among all these soldiers and stuff, basically a gang leader hanging out. But like I said, he's also somewhat of a respected individual in the city because he's on the council. So
yeah,
neat.
The entertainment of the King's Head Tavern is usually by a character named Timon. He's the resident bard, very talented, but can be very snide and easy to anger. The one interesting thing is that his music is magical. He's using his capabilities as a bard to kind of charm and enchant the listeners, and it's described as being very haunted and even dissonant. So you could really kind of play up the situation there when you're having an encounter where your characters are sitting at the table listening to the music and things like that.
I feel like he's casting like charm person a lot. We're gonna talk a bit about the Blue House in a bit, but he's probably one of the people that Lady Marack is paying to put whispers in people's ears and thoughts into people's heads and things like that, because he's very talented.
Yeah, and this is, like Joe said earlier, this is where members of the Free Army frequent.
The average soldier.
Right. The army is fairly small, can be increased, in an emergency. And the size, rarely exceeds about 1,000 troops, in the city itself. And, most of those folks, they come from the common person, from the citizens themselves. And there's also, it's also made up of professional soldiers as well. And they'll go out and go raiding, or if the dwarves from the cantons descend out of the mountains, looking for some slaves, they may be sent out by the mayor to kind of protect and keep the roads open and make sure there's not too much kidnapping that happens.
Yep. So that's the King's Head. The other big tavern or main tavern in this district is the White Rose Tavern. Yeah. And this is where your higher class soldier hangs out. These are where the knights and the paladins of the Sun God and the War God hang out. And the White Rose is, for lack of a better term, not everyone's taste, right? You're going to have shrines and statues to the patron gods and various saints on the walls. There will be bouts of combat that are there each night, but also prayer services are held at dawn and noon. So it's an interesting balance, right? This is, like I said, like your honorable knights and paladins and guys like that hang out here. So it's hard to, it's such a weird thing because it's like religious warriors. I mean, I would even think like war clerics and guys like that would probably hang out here, right? You're going to have candles and incense, that you can buy here. things like that. It's they do masses for the sun god and the war god here as well. So all sorts of interesting going ons in this tavern. It's more, I feel like it's less a tavern and more of like a
temple,
almost like I don't want to call it a general store, but it's like a trade or a place of commerce of sorts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, religious commerce,
Religious
if you want,
commerce.
if you want to hear a liturgy, about the sun god or the war gods, they expect payment, 200 silver pieces per hour.
Yeah.
And there's no bartering, you pay or you don't, but yeah, by day, it's kind of a church, a temple, by night, it's a place where, the knights test themselves against each other. And it's also a place, that holds a lot of secrets. And, you'll see like a number of merchants who are not especially devout will come to the service when negotiating particularly delicate or secret contracts.
Right.
So it's kind of a place that an alternate place, to strike a deal while you're listening to a sermon on the war god or sun god.
It feels almost like a club, like an exclusive club. Like I kind of almost get like a Knights Templar type of vibe from it, or a Freemasons type of vibe from it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, your more religious characters would probably get in your clerics or paladins. Your other characters may be politely asked to leave.
Eggy's not getting in.
Oh, Eggy definitely is not getting in.
Eggy's not getting in this place.
Yeah. But again, not a lot written about those, so there's a lot of opportunity to sandbox it up there. There's two other areas. There's actually three, but I'll talk about two of them. There's the Western Barbican, and that really is the gate that goes into the Citadel from the river. There's a bridge that crosses the river. Again, not much is written about this area, but a Barbican, it's just a fortified outpost or gateway. And it's the outer defense perimeter of the city or castle. The Citadel's probably one of the oldest parts. The mines definitely are older, but that was probably one of the first places built, as a means of defense for the city. And then there's the Citadel itself. It's just high walls, but there's also a prison, built into there. And that's where kind of the worst of the worst criminals are sent to serve their time.
Yeah, we talked about in Upper Zobeck, right? How they kept like the thieves and the common criminals there, and that's where they do the hangings. The really bad criminals, they're here.
Yeah,
that's where they keep them, is in the Citadel. So this is like you said, the worst of the worst are here. There's also we talked about during the council. There is Joran Haklav, right? He is the general of the Free Army. And so he actually has barracks here. He lives here. He trains here. He is not a Griffin Knight, nor does he have a Griffin as far as I know. You could give him one in your version, but as far as the official content goes, I have not seen it say anything about that. But in a time of war, he does command the Griffin Knights as well as the Free Army. Pretty much everybody except for the Order of the Undying Sun. He would control during wartime. This is where he'll live.
Yeah, General Haklav has game. He's not a political appointee per se. He has military experience, and he takes his job, very seriously.
Yeah, he'll consult with like the other major players of the city, master, the masters, the journeymen of the Arcane Collegium, the Griffin Knights, guild masters, even like the crab diviners and the doctors, which we'll talk about, in another episode. He consults with everybody. He's got a really great mind for strategy and war. He knows what he's doing. So if you do run into him, he's not, I would picture him as not somebody to be trifled with, not somebody who's a fool. He's an intelligent, war veteran, guy who can he knows what's up. and he knows people. So
and the army he commands
interesting character.
Yeah, and the army he commands is very elite. Like I said, it's about 1,000 troops, and there's Gearforged, that make up part of the company. They're kind of their heavy infantry, and they also include mages from the Arcane Collegium, like you mentioned earlier. This army trains, they're prepared, and they will go out and do what they need to do to ensure the safety of the city, its citizens, its trade. Most importantly. And you can't miss them. Right. Part of them are made up by the hussars, and you'll see a hussar. They have kind of colorful plumage on their helmets and on the barding of the horse, and you'll also see hussars. They'll challenge you to a duel at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, they like to fight.
Yeah,
they're like, we have the Griffin Knights in the air, and the Housers are patrolling the roads essentially. So they're the air and the land. They're the Air Force and the Army essentially, or the ground, or the infantry or armored infantry, or however you want to call it. They're the mobile guys. And then obviously we have then you have the Free City Army itself of 1,000 or so spears.
Now I know you have a favorite area.
I do. And, it kind of ties in, right? Because we're talking about, the Citadel and how the general commands all this stuff. But outside of war times, right, there's somebody else. And we've talked about her a little bit in the past and about her sister. And that's Lady Fenyll Marack. So outside of wartime, the Citadel really more answers to her. She is this figure that is outrageously glamorous, yet scarred. Like she's seen some stuff. But she really likes to be very, out there and dress up and go to the balls. And imagine this woman that's just decked to the nines in beautiful dresses and jewelry with like just this battle scar across her face. That's Lady Marack. And her sister serves in the council. But if you recall, she actually serves as one of those secret consuls that to the mayor that we don't know who they all are, but we know her. She definitely is one. She's the only one that's kind of out there.
She's one of the really public praetors.
The praetors, right? Yep. So she's feared for her cutting remarks and for her powers as praetor of the Blue House, and she's the mistress of the secret police and of any malcontents who can be convinced to serve the city's greater good. There's also a guild that we'll talk about eventually called the Spyglass Guild that also ultimately report to her. But she comes from a long line of successful merchants. Her family, her and her sister, are profoundly wealthy and drives a really hard bargain with everyone. She's a widow. She has this paranoid mind that helps keep Zobeck free. And so she is, in my mind, she's almost the real ruler of Zobeck more than anybody, because she controls the Blue House, right? So the Blue House, you'll see, it has this striking robin egg blue walls. And they say that may be due to all of its enchantments that the Collegium put on it to help protect it from scrying and things like that. But it's really this largely unassuming compound. You'll see it through there's cold iron barred windows, like I said, the robin blue egg walls, and it's found just down the hill from Zobeck's Citadel. Outside of the Citadel and the Collegium, this is probably one of the most important buildings in all of Zobeck. It's going to be surrounded by high walls, but it's going to be guarded. But these plainclothes guards, I mean, I get like such a CIA kind of feel from this place, because that's what this is. This is a place of spies, of intelligence, of cunning, of questionable means to whatever ends is necessary. Lady Marack runs all this. She's the head of it all. Up top, for those who have been in there, right, you might go in and it's like this kind of really cool looking place. It's nice. She lives there, these lavish, lovely quarters. And then down below, it is hell on earth. It is the interrogation rooms, which I would imagine are filled with torture chambers and other means of getting people to talk and things like that.
Yeah, and it's literally a catacomb,
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's the kobold tunnels that are all over the place that form like the the cartways. They're here too, but it's not connected to the rest of the city. It's independent on its own. And any paths that are connected, right? It requires the special scepter key that only she holds. So getting in this place is damn near impossible.
Yeah, but those that do get in, they can talk about it. I mean, the ones that have been down below, you're probably not getting out. But the ones that are up top will definitely have a lot to talk about. She kind of like a foreign minister too. She has a good relationship with the free cantons. Depending on their mood, her success will depend on the mood of the dwarves of the Iron Crags. And we'll talk about the Iron Crags in future episodes, but they're kind of a confederation of independent states. And so sometimes, they'll speak as one voice, but many times the Iron Crags, the relationships are fractured. And so, she has more people, that she has to deal with. But she dispatches her envoys, made a number of bilateral strategic trade deals with several of the cantons. And her goal is to keep the free city well supplied with coal, wood, black powder, cannons, and ammunition in exchange for gold, trade, and clockwork artifacts. So these treaties are very important, between the two countries. But they do have emergency clauses to increase the level of military supplies, in times of war. We still have issues, with the Maharati Empire, and then there's the Ghoul Imperium and the Duchy of Morgau and Cracovia up to the north. And so their northern border and their southern borders, more like southwestern borders, are of a concern because they have been attacked by both of those countries, in the history. And the Ghoul Imperium will occasionally send up some soldiers, kind of test defenses and things like that.
And she probably knows it's coming because she probably has spies even there, like in the Ghoul Emporium. She has spies everywhere. She's like the spider from Game of Thrones. Her reach is far. She will go on these trips out to the far western parts of Midgard on diplomatic trips and things like that. Because she is constantly, she's a great person for Zobeck because I kind of get the sense that her loyalty really is to Zobeck. She does all these things to protect Zobeck and ensure its freedom and survivability. And, maybe sometimes her methods are questionable. If your players get arrested for something or just piss off the wrong person, you may find yourself in the Blue House and being compelled by her or by the Spyglass Guild to, work for them. And, you can end up being an agent of the Blue House. It's quite possible that agents of the Blue House or the Spyglass will approach your party. And if they suspect them of doing something or if they need their help with something, you can get enlisted, without even realizing it at some points. But if you ever find yourself in the basement of the Blue House, you better believe you're in trouble. Like, that is not a place you want to be. If you're threatened with it, do what you're told and don't end up there because it won't end well. Like, it'll either end with you being tortured and killed or disappearing forever, or you're going to end up working for them. And that's the best case scenario, is you end up working for them. So there's two other kingdoms down south, right? We had talked about how the Matari Empire is encroaching on Zobeck, entirely testing them. Well, the Magdar Kingdom and the Duchy of Prunesdaughter. So the three of them formed an alliance, and they signed a treaty and all that. But afterwards, there's our mysterious lady talking with the queen, so to speak, of the Duchy, who is actually a demigoddess, and talking to her about making sure that things stay good and maybe getting aid of her father if needed. And then the next thing you know, she's sending a whole bunch of soldiers down there to help retake some land that they lost. So she's like doing these backroom deals and things like that to really help strengthen their alliances and really establish Zobeck as a real power. Don't forget, Zobeck's still a young city. They've only been a free city for not even quite 100 years yet. She has done so much to help grow them in recent years and really reinforce their power. So the Blue House in general is a very just interesting place, a very imposing place. There was not a whole lot of content even written about the Blue House until fairly recently when it came out in one of the Warlocks, and then that content was put into the Clockwork City book that we now have. So definitely make sure you read through the section because there's so much good stuff on it, and it could definitely play a really interesting part in your Zobeck games, and especially if you're into that whole political intrigue aspect of D&D. The Blue House has gotta be a part of it. And the other thing too is you might find yourself halfway across the world and run into to Lady Marack or members of the Blue House or the Spyglass Guild on missions out there, because that's how far their reach extends. It can be literally almost anywhere in the upper content of Midgard, all the way down to Nuria Natal or something like that.
Yeah. And it's a building that you can really load up with magic items. The Blue House will utilize whatever it can to give them the edge in their clandestine endeavors to keep ahead of the opposition. And they are frequently acquiring or commissioning magic items to suit a particular need. So her spies are out there. Her spies will gather things and bring it back and add it to their armory. The spider, from Game of Thrones is a great description of her. Her web reaches far and wide and deep into the underdark of the Ghoul Imperium.
Yep. And, she has pretty much, I don't want to say bought, but she's got almost every council of Zobeck in her pocket to some degree. There's a couple she doesn't trust, like Orlando. She doesn't trust mostly because of that girlfriend we had talked about of his. He thinks that she thinks that girlfriend is an agent that could betray Zobeck and is just using Orlando. She does not like the Greymark family because really I think that seems a little personal because they kind of rival her wealth. She thinks that Greymark might be working. He's set up some trade with the Ghoul Emporium, and she thinks that he might betray Zobeck to them. Of course, there's a total possibility that he's a double agent and actually does work for her, or that he's a triple agent and he's, playing both sides and for his own gain or something like that. So there's a lot going on there, but she has bought most of the council members either through gold or through those magic items, like the Mouse King especially. She keeps close tabs on because he keeps her apprised of all the goings on in the Undercity. So he's a valuable ally for her. So yeah, there's a few different magic items you might find in there and things like that. I know they a couple that they list is like an amulet of insight, the Ragged Shroud, rings of embassy, all sorts of different things that they kind of list in the book that are example magic items you might encounter in the Blue House, or maybe be given as a reward from the Blue House, or something to aid you in a quest that you're doing for the Blue House. So they're more than willing to reward those who work for them with stuff like that.
Yeah, there's even special spells that have raised spycraft to an absolute art form, according to the book.
Yeah. So definitely, when we get into, we'll talk about guilds and stuff in a later episode, but the Spyglass Guild especially, combined with the Blue House, can play a major part in your games in Zobeck when it comes to spies and political intrigue and things like that. It's a big part. So we'll definitely talk the Spyglass Guild and tie it into this in a later episode, because together they form this secret police that, anybody from a child in the street to one of the guards of the city, or a soldier, or a council member, anybody, a bartender, could all be part of that secret police force, and you just don't know. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and what I like about the city, the Citadel district, is its size. It's small. The lore leaves a lot of open spaces for you to kind of fill in with your own creativity. You can really just use that as encounters. Courts of the Shadowfey, the team needed to get equipped for their journey to the Courts of the Shadowfey, and so they were sent there to get equipped, with some magical armor or swords, and so I sent them there to visit their quartermaster, who I just really played up as a crotchety person, really wanting to surrender his inventory of equipment to those that aren't part of the military. So that made for some fun role playing as well. So really don't worry about, not every aspect of a Zobeck district is described. So don't worry about that. Just bring some of your own creativity in it. Also, use your players too. If I was to visit a Citadel and go to their armory, what would that armory look like? Have them help you craft the look and feel and tenor of the quartermaster's office in the Citadel.
Yeah, I mean, if you need another good resource, use us. Come onto the Discord server and ask. We're, very happy to help and give some ideas, and it's a great community that can help. That have run a lot of these things, and can suggest adventures and materials and things like that to help you to flush it out. So don't be afraid to come on the server and hang out and ask questions.
So that wraps up our discussion of the Citadel. I think we'll move on to some other fun aspects of the show, our creature showcase. Joe, what do you have for us?
I've been looking forward to this one because this is my first one from Tome of Beast 3. So picture this. You enter a room, and as you look around, it is a place of absolute horrors. Bloody tables with tools of torture lay all about. The rack, the Iron Maiden, and shackles on the wall are just the start. Chains with meat hooks dangle from the ceiling. And as you're walking through, you hear this clanking of metal, and you look and see a pile of chains in the corner begin to move and to rise up and take shape. They slowly begin to take on a humanoid-like form as the chains constantly move about the body like slithering snakes of metal. The arms begin to flail about and whip out towards you. This is a Chain Golem. So Chain Golems are generally found in infernal regions, and they're created in a ritual involving several chain devils. So each of these devils will give one or more of its chains from its own body, and this kind of imbues the golem with its life force. And any of these devils can then control the golem. So this is a fun creature, and I kind of thought about putting it into a torture chamber or something like that of a devil. There are lots of devils and demons and things like that are in the cartways of Zobeck. So I kind of pictured this as something you might run into in some hidden corner of the cartways or something. But more often than not, these golems are created to hunt down a particular quarry and return it to the creator. So this might be an escaped soul or a creature that betrayed the devil, maybe an enemy or some other target the devil wants to eliminate or capture. And these golems are absolutely relentless in their pursuit of their target. These are also not an easy enemy in a fight, as they're immune to things like poison, psychic damage, thunder damage, and any non-magical physical attacks unless the weapon is adamantine. So you're going to have a lot of trouble, damaging these unless you got some kind of magical weapons or spells or things like that can work on it. As far as using it in combat, one of the reasons I like it is it's a fairly easy creature to use in combat, and it's got some great effects that kind of kick in after combat. So it really has just two main things that it does. It has a chain attack. It's +7 to hit, and it's 46 + 4 slashing damage on hit. But when you get hit, the target makes a DC 16 con save. And if they fail, just go, cool, noted, because you're not going to tell them about it for a while. What happens is they get a disease called infernal tetanus. The disease doesn't manifest until 2d4 days later, during which time the infected person has to make a DC 16 saving throw, or they're going to lose 1d4 dex, like from their dex score. And then they're also paralyzed for 24 hours. And the disease just keeps on going. It continues. And every day you have to make this con save. The disease has to be cured either by, a cure disease spell or some other, means like that. Or if they make 3 successful constitution saves over the course of the days, then they're cured of it. They get their dex back once they finish a long rest after they've been cured. So this can go on for a while, and with the paralyzed and things like that, it could be absolutely devastating for days to come. In addition to the damage from the hit and the disease, you also get grappled by the chains. The chains start to wrap around you. It's only a DC 14 to escape. However, if you don't escape, their other ability will kick in on their next turn. So they do get 2 attacks with the chains. They have 2 arms, so 2 attacks. They can only grapple 1 creature, though. But if you're grappled, they can use their action to imprison a grappled creature. And the chain just begins to wrap around you and encase you. And it does 4d6 piercing damage on the start of each of your turns once you're enclosed in these chains. You can break free, or somebody can break you free with a DC 16 strength check, but anybody who tries that takes 2d6 piercing damage as well. So, as in combat itself, it's going to do some damage. Not too tough. I mean, it's like a 16 armor class and a lot of hit points, 120 hit points. But that disease is really what's going to be devastating. And this is a CR8 creature, just so you kind of have an idea. So, I like it because it's not overly complicated to run in combat. I like the whole, this thing could be hunting you. But that disease, man, that disease could be just absolutely devastating if you can't cure it, So,
play it up like tetanus.
Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. Pay it up like tetanus in the real world. Your jaw locks, your joints stiffen. It's debilitating.
Yeah, they actually say here so 2d4 days after infection, the disease manifests, and this will include fever, headaches, sore throat, and muscle aches.
Yep.
So they'll start to feel it, and like I said, you can do like jaw locks and. The area, the wounds will get infected and things like that. So it can be a lot of fun to play with. And I find, I can't remember the last time I was in a group where somebody like the healer had cure disease ready.
Yeah. And it's, and those later effects, the GM sometimes forgets. I write it down because, when we play 2 weeks later, you may not remember. Definitely use that to flavor your games for sure.
So just imagine that thing chasing you through the cartways of Zobeck.
No, I wouldn't want it.
That would be absolutely horrifying. Well, what do you have for us today?
Well, I've got a fun one. Your barge is floating down the river Argent. You've been on the river for a few days after leaving Zobeck, and you're on your way to deposit your cargo in the ports of the Ruby Sea. The river's calm, but you notice that the flow is starting to pick up. You're in a part of the river where there's large boulders rising out of the water, like sentinels guarding the banks. And you kind of see something, interesting. You see these beautiful women lounging on the river rocks, or within the swirling eddies, untouched by the rush of the current. They're beautiful, human, dwarf, elven. Depending on your race, you will see your race on those rocks. Then suddenly the barge strikes a hidden rock, from underwater, tossing you over the rail in the river. The water clarity it's so clear. It's like looking through crystals as the river's current pulls you deeper. And then suddenly a soft hand reaches out and grabs you and pulls you up to where you see the flowing hair of this beautiful woman in the water. And then suddenly her face just kind of starts getting closer to your face, and she's going for your lips. What do you do? These creatures out of Tome of Beast are fey creatures called the Lorelei. And there's actually a fountain in the dock area where the sailors of barges and their family members will go and make offerings, to protect their loved ones from the draw of the Lorelei. These fake creatures, they're the proverbial sirens of the river. But unlike the sirens, described in mythology, where they're kind of like part bird and part female, these are full on female creatures, fey creatures, and they do come in all races. So if you have dwarfs or gnomes or halflings on your ship, there'll be Lorelei of equal race. And even though the book describes the Lorelei largely as women, there's no reason why you can't make them all genders. There can be male, non-gender specific, whatever meets the need for whatever you're playing. And their goal is to draw the sailor into the water and kill them. They're callous. Their goal is to manipulate and destroy male travelers. But again, you can make that gender neutral if you want. And they are a race born from an ancient oath to the River King. And the Lorelei's cruelty stems from that memory. The Lorelei often taunt their prey for days before finally turning on them. And when the opportunity presents itself, it quickly draws heavily armored warriors or sailors into the deep water, and they will kiss you as you drown to death. The picture says it all. They're beautiful, golden hair, fair skin, a little bit more voluptuous or beautiful, than the next one. So they progressively get more beautiful. But the Lorelei, their greatest weapon is their ability to mimic their prey. And so if they're targeting at a dwarf, they will look like dwarves and so forth. They do ignore other women. Women travelers are vexing for the Lorelei. The siren's powers affect the women as readily as the men, but the Lorelei lack the urge to destroy female sailors or passengers. And so women traveling alone or in an all-female group will pass through the Lorelei's territory safely and might even make peaceful contact. However, women who protect male companions, they're viewed as traitors, and so they will take them down, along with their male prey. So you can really mess with your PCs.
Yeah, and you could probably too if you're an all-female group. And you want to use these as an actual combat, you can just flip the script on that and say the Lorelei are male figures and only attack females, and just flip the script on it and make it work for your game.
Sure.
But I love the fact that that they see women that help men as traitors. That just made me laugh.
Yeah, that is funny. They're very high charisma NPCs. 23 with a +6 modifier. These are challenge level 5. You are definitely going to play these where there's more than one. They have some really super cool features. They've got that alluring presence. So that's their siren capabilities. The DC save on that is 17. And if you fail, the charmed creature must take the most direct path towards the Lorelei, regardless of the danger. Again, the idea is the Lorelei are out to kill, the men on the vessel. They also have this unearthly grace. She's able to apply her charisma modifier to all her saving throws in place of the normal ability modifier. And they also have the feature of freedom of movement spell. So whenever she's in contact with a body of water, they are under the effects essentially of the freedom of movement spell. So they're able to surmount any obstacle. They are an 8th level spellcaster, so they can hit you hard if necessary. This is innate spellcasting, so it does not require any material components to cast the spells. And largely in her repertoire are sorcerer spells, so the ice storm and gaseous form and hypnotic pattern and hold person, Misty Step, Fog Cloud, Mage Armor, and so forth. So they really have a lot of spells available to buff themselves up and also debuff you as well. As far as their actions go, their biggest weapon is their charm and their stunning glass. They do have a dagger in the inventory. When you look at the photo on the book, this is the proverbial where are they going to put that dagger, because she's not wearing much. So really, I'd recommend that you kind of stick to the script and really hit them with the charm action or the stunning glance. So this is a way that you can use to create some tension on board the vessel and thin out the crew a little bit, not necessarily the PCs themselves, and just create a lot of tension and fear amongst your party, and use it as a way to kind of torture the NPCs and the PCs, because the River Argent, the barge trip down to the Ruby Sea from Zobeck could take a couple of weeks if you want. So it's really kind of an antagonist that you can throw at your characters, frequently. And the fun part of that is they may devise some interesting ways to try to defeat the Lorelei. Full-on attacks, maybe dress themselves up as women to see if they can do some pretty high deception checks against them or what have you, So this is a creature that is less on the monster, I'm going to attack you and try to rip your guts out. This is one where you can really play with the psyche of your party.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could do they have that alluring presence, right? So once somebody's basically drawn to them, if they fail their save, they're drawn in. So they'll walk right off the boat into the water, and then if they hit you with that stunning glance and you're stunned, you're just going to start sinking. They could just hit you with that combo and possibly kill you or drown you real easily. It seems like they're going to use things like whole person, suggestion, hypnotic pattern, anything they can to kind of stun you and just make you just drowned. Like that's their goal, is
right.
Get you in the water, disable you and let you drown.
Right.
That seems like the best combat scenario for them. Because really, I mean, they got a couple combat spells like Ray of Sickness and a couple other things, but not much else in the way of direct damage. It's more about, charisma and tricking you and charming you and enchanting you.
I haven't played this creature yet, but I can imagine using it more against the NPCs on the barge than the PCs themselves. But, I would have to target one of the PCs because I would definitely want to see a rescue happen, where one of the PCs falls in, they're sinking. Your PCs, they never want to take off their armor or their backpacks. So, play that extra weight to your advantage and, create an encounter where one of the PCs is forced to rescue another one.
Yeah. And, obviously the bard's such an easy target here too. So
yeah, for sure. Well, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. Joe, how can folks reach you?
So as always, you guys can reach me at my YouTube channel, which is GM Toolbox, where I'm doing all my videos every week. You can also find me on Twitter at GM_Toolbox. You can find me in the Midgard Adventures Discord server as well at GM Toolbox there, plus my Facebook and Instagram and all those other great social medias.
Yeah, you can reach me on the Midgard Adventures Discord server and on Twitter. I'm at Clayton Thompson. That's Thompson without a P. The Discord server also has their own Twitter account, and that's Midgard_ttrpg. You can also hang out with other fans of Midgard on the Discord server. The Mead Hall is a very popular gathering place for folks to just talk about anything. But there's all kinds of other channels on the server. If you're looking for ideas or or want to talk about an adventure you're running, we have a channel for all of the koboldpress adventures. We have a channel for the bestiaries, all of the lore books. And a lot of the kobolds, the designers, hang out in those channels, and you may be surprised that your question will be answered by one of the people who actually wrote the material that you're using in your game. Definitely, visit. There's a lot of great ideas. People share maps and encounters and, all kinds of stuff.
Yep. So if you guys liked our show, make sure you please click the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're also on all major podcast platforms, so please subscribe, leave us a positive comment or a 5-star review. We also do have a Twitter channel for the show. It's at That Midgard Show on Twitter. And even better, just spread the word about the Midgard Show, because we'd love to, keep growing and spread the word. So that's it for today. And remember, as Wolfgang Barr says,
strip it for parts and make it your own. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.